You served in Duvdevan,
Yeah.
one of Israel's most elite special forces.
Yeah. But also in Jenin and Nablus, there is the cities.
Yeah.
And there is the refugee camps.
Yeah.
Like the places that the terrorists know that it's very hard for the IDF to get there. So the unit, we have our own capabilities that we developed over 30 something years, that we know how to get inside, very surgical, and to take out the terrorist, maybe arrest him or dismantle him, and to go out very quickly. By the way, 90% of the times without even firing one single bullet. To go in and out.
I do have a task, just as you have a task, and that's to show the love of the Messiah that I follow. That's all I can do.
Yeah, well, you follow, and you say this publicly, a Jewish Messiah. How does that make you feel? What do you think about when you hear that?
That's interesting.
So exciting, huh? Do you think I can start off with a joke? Lighten things up?
That's what we're here
funny.
for, man.
Only if it's funny.
Okay, so there's this guy who's being interviewed for like a script job. So the interviewee says, in English, you have to say 3 colors, yellow, green, and pink. So the American comes up, he's like, this is easy. I wake up in the morning, I look out the window, the sun is shining bright yellow, look over to the green grass, and it's some pink flowers. So the Israeli's like, oh no, it's in English. Oh no, not good. He's like, okay, please try, So the Israeli's like, okay. So I wake up in the morning and I get a phone call. Green, 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 green. I pink up the phone, pink. And I say, yellow.
I love it. I love it.
Okay. Let's go for the Israeli accent. We love Israel.
Yeah, you're stuck between two worlds, man. I know. But so welcome everyone to today's podcast. We got two special guests with us today. We have Nate, who is a Hollywood actor, very outspoken supporter of Israel. Thank you. And a man of deep faith.
Yeah.
We really appreciate that. And Guy, a former elite commander in Duvdevan. Thank you so much for your amazing work in defending the people of this country. I mean, we really appreciate you guys. And it's great to have you here. You guys have an incredible story to share, separately, but also together as friends. Yeah. So on the heels of that funny joke, thanks, man. Nate, I'm going to start with you. What was a pivotal moment in your life that brought you to faith in Yeshua as Messiah?
Wow. There was a series of events. I think that's one of the things when you become a follower of Yeshua, you realize it wasn't like one event, but a multitude of events that led you to a space. I had just finally reached my dream of becoming a Hollywood actor, which is something I worked really, really hard for. I started sort of pursuing a career in acting at the age of 16. And at 27, I got my big break in Hollywood, which was The Vampire Diaries and The Originals. Right. And it was just a dissatisfying moment. I felt very disappointed with the amount of sacrifice and effort I made to get to this place, to realize it wasn't fulfilling anything on the inside. So there was something missing. So I ended up going to a church conference, massive event in Atlanta, Georgia, called Passion Conference. They put it on every year. They have 50,000 college students that come into a stadium. And I was sitting in the stadium, and the speaker at the time on the last night of the event asked a very, very simple question, but the question I needed to ask myself. And so he said, what's the most important thing in your life? And in my head, in a stadium of 50,000 people, I said, acting. It's my identity. It's my purpose. It's my dream. It's everything that I've been working towards. And then the next statement, he said, if it's not Jesus, it's never going to satisfy you. And it was just one of those things where it was like the woman at the well moment. Maybe if that question had been posed to me a year earlier, 4 years earlier, wouldn't have had any impact on me.
Right.
But in that specific moment of time where I was seeking and searching for some sort of satisfaction, that was the question and the challenge. So there was an invitation put at my feet. Okay, and I thought to myself, if everything this man is saying that is true about this Messiah, this Jewish Messiah named Jesus, then I'm going to put it to the test. So I went home that night after the conference and I changed my Instagram. It was actually my TikTok, because we didn't have Instagram back then, but my TikTok profile said actor/social drinker. That's how I defined myself, which is not very impressive, right? It's like, imagine having that on your tombstone. Here lies Nathaniel Buzolic, actor/social drinker.
Right.
And I remember just erasing it and changing it to Jesus follower. And that sort of started the journey.
Well, one thing that I like that you said, I saw an interview with you the other day, and you said, I am a follower of the Jewish Messiah. That sounds interesting coming from a non-Jewish person.
Yeah.
And
but historically accurate.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, and I like the way that you put it because it challenges the concept of what a Christian really is.
Totally.
You know, and actually what the word Christ or Christian actually means.
Yeah, well, I think, often Jewish people come to me and they say, well, we don't really believe in your book or your religion. And the first thing I'll say is, it's not my book and it's not my religion. When you think about it, I'm believing in a Jewish Messiah who had Jewish followers in the land of Israel. This is your story that I'm just grafting myself into because I'm buying into the promises that God made not only to you, but to every single nation.
Right. So in other words, you're coming in.
Yeah, I'm coming in. I'm a guest.
Right. You're being brought into the covenant of God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob through the Jewish Messiah.
Absolutely.
And us as Jews, we actually have to be regrafted in.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to you, Guy.
Yeah, let's do this.
You served in Duvdevan,
Yeah.
one of Israel's most elite special forces.
Yeah.
When I was young, I would always watch movies about guys like you. And I wondered, I'm like, I want to be like that. And would I have the courage to actually really do it? Now, I still don't know because I've never done it, but you have. And can you share with us about what that experience was like and what kind of motivated you to take on the challenge of going into something so important and extreme?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll start by saying that in Israel, still there is like an amazing trend that all the most, talented, athletic, smart guys want to go to the special forces. It's something like unbelievable. If you're comparing it to other nations that, in the age of 16, 17, you want to be like to go to college, you want to, go play football, soccer.
Yeah.
In Israel, we're getting ready to the army. So, like what caused me or what, got me this fire of desire to want to go to the special forces. It's when I was a young kid, I experienced few terror attacks. I'm from Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
And back in the days, I remember this like fear that prevailed in the streets those days. I remember as a young kid, like my mother wouldn't allow me to go to take a bus, to be with friends, all of us together.
Yeah.
Like you have to be all the time aware. And I remember this fear, and I also remember like I had like 3 or 4 kids in my school that got murdered in terror attacks. So this fear like brought me to a place that I wanted to do like to make like a change. So I had a strong desire to get to the IDF Special Forces. This is what really motivated. But also, you need to understand when you live in Israel, like take example of these days, right? You have this unbelievable heroism every day. And heroism, yeah. And the young kids see those guys, not only in the special forces, like everybody that joined the IDF, give this unbelievable sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice, getting injured physically, mentally, to serve others,
right?
To serve people that they don't know.
Don't even know.
Yeah. You can honk in the street that you're not, driving on a green light.
Right, you're not going as fast enough.
But they will sacrifice their life for you.
Right.
So it got me to this position that I want to do something else. And in the age of 16, I started to train. Like when my friends in high school, like Elisha, went to holidays, went to we call it Tiul Shnati, when you go with your class, having fun, going to travel a lot. So I had a bag with 40 pounds a bag, and I went on the beach, walking, training very hard to get to the IDF, and started my selection in the age of 17. You're doing like a long period of selections, IQ test, physical test.
You have to pass a lot of things. Not everybody makes it. So
No. Like for Duvdevan unit specifically, we like to say that it's like around 50 out of 5,000 that applications.
Right. Wow. Wow, that's amazing. A lot of people have a hard time when they struggle finding parking in Tel Aviv, but yet you're going into some really, serious situations. I'm sure some of them you can't talk about. Thank you for sharing that. In some of your most difficult moments, did you ever feel like you wanted to cry out to God or ask for help from something more than just a person?
No.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like you sometimes have like scary parts,
Right.
Your heartbeat before like you're, putting the bomb on the door, and you, like right before the bomb, and you need to go inside, and there
Yeah.
is terrorist inside that
Yeah.
is about to shoot on you and things like that. So you have like this, but
The heck?
you have your friends around you. Like you're training so hard for this. You're doing rehearsals. You're doing like so
Yeah.
many training to
You're
get
programmed,
to
yeah.
this like specific point of capturing the terrorist.
Yeah.
So you feel very secure when you're with your friends around you. So I never felt I don't want to do it because I'm scared or something like that.
Yeah.
Never. You are with your friends, and in the special forces they also teach you like you have this feeling after you're finishing your training like I'm invincible. Nobody can take me out. Nobody. So it's kind of a things that you're doing. It's like physical training, mental training.
Right.
So we don't have
Prepared.
these things. Sure, when you're like your friend getting a bullet in his leg, or like he's getting injured very badly, you see the blood, you see everything. You have something in you that say, "Oh my God, this is real.
Yeah.
Like this is real." But also you have this, unbelievable mechanism in your head, like that keep you safe. You don't
Right.
need to think about it right now. Do your job, bring everybody home safe, and let's talk about it later.
Yeah, but that mechanism over time can break down because you witness, the more you experience extreme tragedy, the more that mechanism, that safety mechanism that we have can break down. And you've seen a lot of people that have had that mechanism break down, which is one of the reasons why you do what you do.
Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. So I served the unit in the IDF for 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
And discharged a year ago, and since then I'm the CEO of Friends of Duvdevan.
Right.
So it's a foundation, it's a 501c3, and basically
What is Duvdevan?
Duvdevan.
Duvdevan first and foremost, and
so
then Friends of Duvdevan.
Okay, great. So Duvdevan is an undercover counterterrorism unit that its mission is to arrest or dismantle the most vicious terrorists in the region. We call them high-value targets.
Mm-hmm.
So we are operating mainly in the West Bank, in the Judea and Samaria, but when there is wars and everything, we're also operating in Gaza and everything. So if you saw Fauda, this movie, basically
It's on
based
Netflix.
on Netflix. Yeah, it's based on the producers came from this unit, so it's based on our unit. Basically what the unit does, we have our techniques that I'm not going to elaborate them here,
Yeah.
but we have our techniques to get to the most hostile places, all the refugee camps, all those places. You saw some of them.
I drove through them.
I saw some of them.
I've driven through by accident when I first came to Israel. This is Hashem's hands over you in protection. You rent a car from Ben Gurion Airport, and they say, when you see the red sign, don't go through it. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm Australian, and so I stopped listening. But I drove through like Jenin and Nablus and Ramallah.
But also in Jenin and Nablus, there is the cities.
Yeah.
And there is the refugee camps.
Yeah.
Like the places that the terrorists know that it's very hard for the IDF to get there. So the unit have their own capability. We have our own capabilities that we developed over 30 something years, that we know how to get inside, very surgical, and to take out the terrorist, maybe arrest him or dismantle him, and to go out very quickly. By the way, 90% of the times without even firing one single bullet, to go in and out.
How do you when you do a mission like this, because this is this was your job for a very long time, you would do something that's super intense, super dangerous. You're doing these things that most of the world can understand, and then you'd come home,
Right.
you'd go back to Tel Aviv, and then you'd go out for dinner on Duzengov Street. And how do you disconnect those two worlds? And how do you move back into just, okay, now I'm having dinner, right?
That's a great question. Honestly, it's like, I trying to explain it like over and over, and very hard to address it. But in Israel, we are in deployments 24/7. We don't have like in the U.S. Army, when you are traveling from Texas, you are doing like a deployment in Iraq, right, for 6 months, and then you go home for another period of time. In Israel, you are in deployment 24/7. You can be with your home and with your kids and wife, getting like a message, and In 5 minutes, you need to be outside.
Right.
Someone picking you up. And 2 hours, you're in the middle of
You're already
Jenin,
there.
refugee camp.
Yeah.
You know, explosive bomb shooting, blood over and over. And then you need to go back to your wife, hold your son. And I'm going to tell you like one story, like something that I'm not special. I'm not special. That my members in the unit, you know, have it a lot of times. Okay, I'm sitting. We have an operation. We are entering Jenin. We're doing our thing, and we have to use explosive. We breached the door. The terrorist got injured from the explosive. We captured him, took him out. Blah blah blah. Okay, and some of this blood, because we took care of him. Yeah, we have medics. We took care of him. Some of the blood pouring on my hand, and I have it on my. On my uniform. Mm-hmm. So I'm going back like a few hours later. I'm driving home, okay, sitting with my friends, wife, family, and I went to shower, wash my hands and everything, and then I'm eating, and my wife stopped. She's telling me like, "Guy, you have something in your hand." I'm like, "Look at it, there's a blood, like a small piece of blood." Like I'm sitting in Tel Aviv,
Right.
eating food, and I have like
Someone else's
so
blood,
this
yeah.
is like the thing that the Israeli army, the IDF, and the special forces need to deal with every day. This, we call it 0 to 100.
Right,
This shifting from 55 pulse to like 200 and then
Yeah.
go back.
So mentally, you're kind of always ready.
Always ready.
Yeah, always ready.
And unfortunately, some of us and Duvdevan have a lot of PTSD.
Right.
We're developing a lot of PTSD.
Right.
And this is what I'm doing, like mainly like my job in the foundation. This is like the number one priority right now, all the PTSD thing.
Right.
Because
Do you like pay for psychologists? And
yeah,
things
we have
like
a
that?
programs. We call it the resilience program. That we also not taking care. We are taking care of the soldiers. We are doing one-on-one sessions. We are doing like a team retreats. We are taking a bunch of guys, like a team. We discovered that it's very hard when you're a special forces guy to raise your hand and to say, I have problems.
Right.
I'm peeing in bed. I have nightmares.
Yep.
But when you're doing it as a team, it's easier for them. You know, you're with your buddies. So we're taking them, we send them to some nice place. They're having beers, going to the beach. But every day they have a session that they have to speak about their problems. And we found out that it's very good. They're going back to service. Because my goal, we don't have veterans in the IDF. Veterans, when you leave the army, that's it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You're having your like a flower shirt and you're like a pensioner. In the IDF, you're a reservist. You go back home, but you can call anytime.
You can get called up, right?
Yeah. So we have, my goal is to get them to a place that they're serving not until the age of 21, 24, 25. I want them to serve until the age of 40. So this is why we're also taking care of them, but also build their resilience to go back to the field because we don't know what's going on next. Next year is going to be another war, and I need those guys.
Bro, I'm going to start crying.
Oh,
What
yeah.
you're doing, bro, it's so incredible.
It's the amazing thing about Israel,
My
though. You
gosh.
know, the time that I've spent here, particularly over the last, 19 months, I always say this is a nation that has too many heroes. There's too many people in this nation that are actually like
I know. I'm humbled
heroes.
all the time here, bro.
Yeah,
I'm humbled
they're
all the
incredible.
time. As an American that grew up in the States and came to Israel 25 years ago for the first time, I didn't have to go through the army because I was too old
Yeah.
when I immigrated, when I became a citizen.
Right.
Siti Aliyah ב-2003. And so I've been here for the majority of the time ever since. And I'm living in a country surrounded by people who have sacrificed so much so that I can live here in peace. For what that means, and
That's the beautiful
I feel
thing,
so
isn't
humbled
it?
all the time.
I thought about this once. What is the IDF and people like Guy fighting for? They're fighting for the Jewish identity to have their Shabbat and have their moment of peace once a week. And that's what they're doing. They're holding the line so the Jewish identity can return to their ancestral homeland and practice their Shabbat. Because the Shabbat is that moment of time where I have peace, but the only reason there can be peace within the house is because there's brave people like Guy.
Someone asked me once, like, how you feel when you're serving, going to wars, operations, stuff like that, and people in Tel Aviv sitting in cafes.
Right.
So I told them that this is why I'm
That's
doing
why
it.
you do it, right?
I want them to sit in a cafe,
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
have
Yeah.
the time, and this is about it.
Well, Nate, you speak so passionately about Israel, right? But yet you've built a career in Hollywood.
Had.
Yeah, well, And we can touch on that too, because you've sacrificed a lot, right, to support Israel. It was risky for your career, and you can maybe discuss a little bit about what happened to it because of your support for Israel. What motivated you to take that challenge?
I would say,
because you're like, I mean, I'm cutting you off, but you gave up the dream.
Yeah, everything. I've lost a lot of things in the last 19 months. I had a lot of work on the books that were cancelled for non-disclosed reasons. Actors will no longer communicate with me, or I used to do a lot of fan conventions. I'm not allowed to be in the same room as some of the actors now, because they don't want to be associated with anyone who supports the nation of Israel. So there's been those things. That's fine. I think the big thing for me is, and this is where I'm grateful for being a follower of Jesus. When you go through the idea of what Jesus presents in Matthew, 5, 6, and 7, he goes onto a mountainside in the Galilee and presents this idea of the Beatitudes, and it starts off with "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven," and then he proceeds to go through a series of characteristics that will define a true follower of him.
Right.
But the last one, which I think is the most important for us to understand as followers of Jesus, is blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness or righteousness' sake. And that's the test, right? We start off in humility, and I started off in humility, saying to God, I don't want my life. I have nothing to offer a king, and I've got everything to ask for. And I was on my knees begging for, the removal of my life.
Same.
And so that starts in that moment of time where I knew I wasn't worthy of anything. And I got led down a road to where I was going to be put to a test. If you understand that Yeshua died and sacrificed himself so that I might live out of love, then when I truly understand Christianity, I must also sacrifice something so I can prove my love. And so the proof of persecution is that whatever I'm doing it for, I love. And so all the things that I've lost, you start to understand the words of Paul in Philippians, where he says, I consider everything that I've lost rubbish in comparison to knowing Christ, knowing the Messiah. Right. And so I have lost a lot of things, but I think, people come to me all the time and say, thank you so much. We're so grateful. And we know you've lost a lot. Why do you do it? And I'm like, what I've lost proves I love. And so that's why it's been a powerful thing that you're partaking in the suffering. If I was gaining something from this situation, and look, if I was a logical person, if any logical person was sitting down and they were only looking out for themselves, well, the obvious answer would be, I'm going to go support the pro-Palestinian movement. It's popular, it's trendy, there's 1.9 billion Muslims in the world. I post a free Palestine flag tomorrow, whoa, my stock just skyrockets. Right. Hollywood loves me because now I'm the social justice warrior, like fighting for the oppressed. But that's the lie, right? And that's the trap of the enemy. Going and walking the narrow road means you're going against what the world is doing. Yeah. And you're actually aligning yourself with the will of God, which is the Jewish people returning to the land, and anyone who stands with them will be persecuted. But now I'm proving my love because I was saved by love. Right. So for me, it's pretty simple. Now, Hollywood's a tough one, isn't it? Because when I became a Christian, I faced persecution on a sort of a minor level. Right. So I guess there was a period of preparation, like, okay, people don't like me because I'm a Christian, which led me to a place where, well, people are going to hate you when you say I'm a Christian Zionist. And I am a Zionist. I believe, and to me, what is Zionism? Zionism is believing in the promises that Hashem made to a people and seeing it through. It's simple. And I was sitting with two Israeli girls watching the sunset yesterday on the beach, and I said to one of the girls, I was like, I want you to type this into ChatGPT. Type in how many years was it from Adam to the birth of Abraham. I said, type that in and tell me what the number is. And she said, okay. So she typed it in and it came up to 1,948 years. And I said, when was Israel reestablished? And she said 1948. And I said, so what is God saying? He's saying my covenant to Abraham still stands. Just as Abraham was born 1,948 years after Adam.
I'm going to check it.
Yeah, you can do it. You can check it. Israel will be reborn in 1948. God's making a declaration to the nations, and he's making a declaration to his people, and it's powerful. So
and he's done a lot of stuff like that in our lives as well, which is
bet.
why we do what we do, why we're willing to lay it down and be hated, in our own homeland, for the things that we do. I was accosted on the street the other day. Well, I was having a very respectful conversation with two young gentlemen that were willing and wanting to speak with me.
Yeah.
And he came in and was assaulting me verbally. And he was saying things like, you come here and you do this and you come, during the time of war. I'm like, brother, I'm Jewish and I'm Israeli and I live here. I did it before, I'm going to do it now, and I'm going to do it after.
Yeah.
I said, I've experienced what you've experienced.
Yeah.
And so we lay that down. One really good friend and pastor said to me once, he says, I lost everything and God made me a winner. I lost it all and God made me a winner.
Yeah.
And we win everything that we could ever imagine.
It's
by laying our lives down. And by laying our lives down, we get
it's not logical to the world.
It's not. It's upside down.
It's illogical.
It's
to
upside
man.
down.
I'll tell you one story. I was in New York on the 5th of October 2023, right? 2 days before October 7th. And I went down to Times Square. And at Times Square, there was a whole bunch of religious, Jewish guys who believe that I think it's Rabbi Nachman is the Mashiach, right? I don't know what the movement's called, but there was a whole group of them. They were waving flags. They were saying, Mashiach, Mashiach, Mashiach.
Lubavitcher Rebbe?
Yeah, Lubavitch, right? So Lubavitch. So I was curious and I said, okay, hey, I've got some questions for you guys. Was Lubavitch born in Bethlehem? And they're like, no, he was born in the Ukraine. I was like, isn't according to the Torah and according to the Tanakh that the Mashiach must be born in Bethlehem, according to the prophet Micah? And so they were like, and they didn't really know. And then one of them said to me, well, who do you believe is the Mashiach? Because they thought maybe I was Jewish,
Yeah.
And I said, I believe Yeshua is Hamashiach. They all spat on me, like literally spat on me. And I was like,
Yeah.
And they left, they all like yelled at me and said horrible things to me, and they left. And everyone around me was looking at me, like the whole crowd. And then a Jewish guy came up to me and he said, I'm Jewish. I'm so sorry they did that to you. And I said, it's okay, brother. It's fine. And he's like, I actually am shocked at how you responded.
Yeah.
I'm shocked at how you just took that and didn't respond in a way. I was like, you know what? May the glory go to God. Now, what's kind of interesting about that is I have nothing against the kids that spat on me. It could very well be that they could look at me today and be like, thank you for supporting Israel. Wow, you're amazing. But here's the irony. Like, you would think an experience like that would make me go, October 7th, well, I'm not going to help these people.
Yeah, right.
I'm not going to stand with them. Like 2 days ago, a group of them spat on me at Times Square. Yeah. But here's the thing. I'm not motivated by the actions of people.
Beautiful.
I'm motivated by the will of the Father.
Right. And also, they're not representative of anything.
No, exactly. Exactly.
It's a good point.
And so what our world wants to do now is they want to categorize the Jewish identity as just a small group of people. Like, that's who the Jewish people will be a representative to the world. And maybe one person will act up, or one Jewish person as a CEO of a company will do something dishonest and shady, and the whole people get blamed for it.
Right.
Now, you guys, all as Jews, know that the diversity and the depths and the lengths and the ranges of the Jewish identity is unbelievable. It's like so vast. You have Ethiopian Jews and Iraqi Jews, like Jews from Yemen, Spain, and all these places, Poland, and like they're not just one type of people. And some are religious, some are secular, some are ultra orthodox. There's so many varieties within Judaism, and it's like, unfortunately, it's like you all get thrown into just one group and one category. And I often say, and we said this on the drive over, the Jewish people have become the scapegoat of the world. Yeah. Whatever the problem of the world is, let's blame it on the Jews. Yeah. Let's blame it on it. If we're against capitalism, the Jews are capitalists. If we're against communism, the Jews are communists. If we're against racism, the Jews are racist. Yeah. Whatever problem the world wants to have or define, they use the Jews as scapegoats. But it actually leads us to something further, because the Jewish people are the proof that the God of Israel exists.
Absolutely.
And so the hatred really, subconsciously and spiritually, is towards the creator of the universe. Right. They just can't harm him, so they go for the next best thing, his children, his beloved, the apple of his eye. And they say, if we can't kill you, we'll do the next best thing. We'll go for the thing that you love, and we know you love it like spiritually, so we'll go after it.
And that actually can be supported biblically,
For sure.
that argument.
Yeah, and also like that's why being the chosen people is not always a good thing, right? Like
getting
we're
mocked.
chosen for the good and the bad. You know what I mean?
Well, like, let's go back to the Torah, right? Sorry to make this like a guy. I love the Bible, as you can see now so much. The very first...
You're on the right channel, bro.
Yeah, exactly. The very first murder in the Torah was Cain killing his brother Abel, right? And he killed him out of jealousy because God made a choice. Now, here's the interesting thing. We love a God that gives us free will to choose. We hate a God that makes a choice. And that is what the Jewish identity proves to the world, that you don't like God when he makes a choice, because he made a choice. Now, 2 religious girls in Jerusalem came up to me once, and we were talking, we were chatting, and I was talking about, all these things, and they're like, at first they said, are you Jewish? And I was like, no, I'm actually a Christian. Like, why didn't you become a Jew? You talk like a Jew, you act like a Jew, you know more about Judaism than we do. Why didn't you become a Jew? And I said, because it's not my story. And I have a choice. I have the choice that Cain had all the way back in the book of Bereshit. He had a choice to either look at the choice that God made and celebrate it and learn to understand it and enjoy it, or oppose it. And so I have the choice as a Christian, as a non-Jew. I don't need to be the center of the story. I don't need to be the chosen person. That would just be my ego and my pride. I want to be the number one story.
Yeah.
But instead, the true Christian is, the story's not about me. It's about God and what he's doing. And so I have a choice. I can look at what God's doing with the Jewish people and I can oppose it, which Christianity is starting to move towards once again, which is tragic. Or I can look at the story of the Jewish people and I can celebrate what God's doing, because it is a love story that's unfolding before our very eyes.
That's right.
So, Guy, you guys are good friends, right?
Yeah. We're
Nice. That's beautiful. So, has your opinion of Jesus Yeshua changed because of your friendship with Nate?
I would say this. First of all, I'm not a religion guy. I didn't came from a religion family, but I'm not a secular. I don't like the word secular, by the way. In secular in Hebrew, it's chalul. Chalul, it's something that there is nothing inside. And I believe that every Jewish people have some kind of a spirit in him.
Mm-hmm.
So when people ask me, you're a religion, you're a secular, I'm saying, I'm Jewish. This is my answer. I don't think like I get into this religion part, but I will say this, and we also spoke about it when we drove here. The Israelis have to embrace the Christian community more than what we do. Like more just, give this guy that he's very modest. He's like, it's very complicated for him. He's from Australia. They have death threats on him. And there is a lot of things more than what he's presented. But so when I met him, and I'm also a very good friend with Douglas Murray. He's also a great guy that I really, really appreciate. He also visited the unit.
Is he Christian?
He's a Christian. And so I will say that I have more exposure to the Christianity, and I think we need to be more close than what we are today.
I agree. We have
the Christians, the Jewish people have to understand that we are strong, like the Israelis, not only the Jewish people, but the Israelis and Israel. We are very strong by ourselves. We're always saying, we need to defend ourselves by ourselves, right? But we have a good friends that we have to embrace more. Mm-hmm. Like the Christian community showed that they are like the best friends of ours, and we need to embrace them more than what we do.
Can I get specific? What about Nate's life has changed your opinion about Christianity? Because when we grew up, I don't know if we went to the same school.
Yeah. Of course, we never...
knowing Jesus, it was like kind of taboo, It's like, that's not for us.
You're totally right. And I remember you, and I remember that the place that you grew up from. I said, who's this weird guy? And I'm saying, it's like Christian. He's a Christian. He's Jewish. I don't understand what's going on. And I think there is a lot of... It's coming from a lot of ignorance. People don't understand the relationship between us and other religions. So in Israel, we are very Masortiim, we are very, traditional. And we need to learn more to understand that we believe in the same stuff, the same values. Okay, so you have your path, and I have my path, but basically we have almost the same values, and we need to be together. And by the way, it's not only with the Jewish and the Christians. We have very similarities with the Druze communities in Israel. I don't know if you know, but we're like the father of Tzipporah, Moses' wife. He is a Druze. So we have it's like a kind of we have a lot of connections, and we need to know more in order to be better friends.
Bro, you're advocating for Christianity is filling my heart. It's so beautiful, bro.
Listen,
I love to hear this.
We saw in history there is a lot of extremists, right? We also suffered from Christianity, the Jewish people, for many years. But they are like the radicals, and we need to avoid that. We have radicals, the guys that spit on you.
Yeah.
They're also radicals.
Yeah, exactly.
They need to get slapped in the face, to be honest. And I'm very proud of you.
Well,
that
they need
you
a
stay
hug.
calm.
They need a.
I wouldn't hug him. I was probably I would defend you.
Yeah, well, it's
For
funny
sure.
because the other day when this guy was verbally assaulting me, I was doing everything I could to get a handshake out of the guy, to give him a fist bump, and he did at the end. I was so happy. No, because I don't want to end on this. You're assaulting me, but I love you, man. I mean, I'm here because I love humanity, and you're my brother in humanity. And no matter what you tell me, I can still love you. And he was trying so hard not to let the anger dwindle.
And I imagine someone like that has had an experience with some level of Christianity that maybe he was hurt or affected or whatever, or he was taught, from his father or story. So
I was taught the same things.
Yeah. So I think when you start to try and see people, people will oppose the message. And one thing that I've learned as a Christian is it's not my job to convert anybody.
Right.
It's my job.
We can't.
We can't. It's impossible. It's impossible. I mean, even when the disciples come to Jesus and they say, who can possibly be saved? Jesus says, for man, it's impossible.
Right.
But with God, all things are possible. Right. And so I don't have a job. And, I think often even the Jewish identity has been quite fearful of me sometimes, because they're like, are you coming here to convert us? Are you trying to convince us? And I often say, I couldn't if I tried.
Beautiful.
But I do have a task, just as you have a task, and that's to show the love of the Messiah that I follow. That's all I can do.
Yeah, well, you follow, and you say this publicly, a Jewish Messiah. How does that make you feel? What do you think about when you hear that?
That's interesting. That's interesting. You also need to remember, all of you need to remember that as kids, as a Jewish kid, an Israeli kid, we're growing up, we have history classes about the Nazis,
right?
The Crusaders, the people that did a lot of damage to the Jewish people. So we are from, even the symbols, how the cross of the Nazis look like. It's very, so it's you need to know more in order to understand it. I'd never get into the depth of that, but I know today for sure, after October 7th, first of all, I became more Jewish or more traditional. Not because I suddenly believe that there is a God that did everything, but I feel like the war between Israel and it's something happening it's bigger than Israel and Hamas. It's bigger than that.
It's a holy war.
It's a holy war, and there is all the anti-Semitism that I see around me brought me to this situation that I need to be. We say it in Hebrew, we say dafka. You don't want me to be Jewish, dafka, because I will be Jewish.
Right.
I will do things in purpose.
Right.
And I think today when you see the not the admiration, I would say how the Christians, the Christian communities. By the way, we are in my foundation. We have many supporters. That the Christian community, they believe in us. They believe in our cause. So I cannot hug them. I brought this guy, this unbelievable guy. I brought him to the heart and soul of Duvdevan unit. I trust him. And someone asked me, the guy, it's like an undercover unit. It's secret. I so believe in him, not only him, the Christians that are in our side. I believe what they're trying to do, the support they want to, they're trying to hug us, and we need to hug them back. This is why I believe.
And I'll say this as well. As someone who has spent a considerable amount of time in the land of Israel, but is also a firm believer in Jesus the Messiah, if the Jewish identity came into faith and understanding of who Yeshua truly is, they would put us to shame. They would be so good at following the Messiah that they would actually put the modern Christian identity to shame.
Oh, absolutely.
And we have a lot to thank the Jewish world because their resilience and their stubbornness not to shift has actually given me an opportunity 2,000 years on, when I went looking and trying to search for the historical, authentic, Jewish Jesus,
Right.
I could still find him because they held on to their identity and belief so strongly. Now, the persecution that all of you have faced for simply being born Jewish, if the same persecution was implemented to the modern Western Christian world, we'd all be out. It's not worth it.
That's right.
People are trying to kill me. People are trying to cancel me. People, I can't even wear a cross anywhere. They would have left like in the masses.
In droves, yeah.
And yet the Jewish people have a resilience that has been put into their spirit by Hashem. They're going to hold on to the very end. Like no matter what happens, no matter how many times this world tries to stamp me out, I am holding on to what I'm called to be, which is a Jew, which I think is actually beautiful and powerful. And so I think, as Christians, we have a big responsibility. And we have to remember that everything that history has happened, we can't just remove and we can't just replace. We can't just pretend like during the Holocaust that people weren't going to church on a Sunday while Jews were being taken off to death camps.
Right.
We have work to do, and our work is so simple. If radical Christianity that was hateful and divisive pushed them away from understanding Mashiach, then I have to radically love in a way that sells everything of myself for them just to go, wow, no one's loved us like that. And that's what people say to me on the streets. We never expected in our lifetime to see a non-Israeli, non-Jew put everything on the table.
Right.
I told them that
Right.
I think you love us more than we loved ourselves.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful, bro. Yes.
But imagine if every Christian did that. Imagine if every Christian in America today said, Nate's right.
Right.
And here's how I'll present it to the Christian world, to the Christians watching this. This is how I understand it. And I want to take us back to the book of Genesis one more time because I love it.
You can stay there all day.
The story of Jacob is powerful and beautiful, and it tells us the beginning of how Israel will be formed. Remember, Jacob is the figure that's going to be renamed from Yaakov, a deceiver, to Israel, one who wrestles with God, right? And so when Jacob is running from his brother Esau, and he goes to his uncle's house, he sees a beautiful girl, Rachel, and she's beautiful, and he's in love. It's like love at first sight, right? And he's like, this is my wife. This is my bride.
It's a love story. I love that.
What does he do? He works 7 years.
Right.
And he works 7 long years. Now, just for someone listening right now, think about that. If there was a girl that you loved and someone said, okay, you can have her, but you have to work for 7 years before you can even have any intimacy or closeness with her, would you do it?
Yeah.
This is how much Jacob loved her. He works for 7 years. The night of his wedding, what happens? Does he get
deceived.
Rachel?
No, Leah.
He gets deceived. He gets an unexpected bride. Leah. Wasn't expected. Now, Jacob, we don't think about this, has a choice. He says, okay, I'll just take Leah. I couldn't be bothered. I've already done 7 years. Or, no, I love her.
Right.
I deeply love her. So he accepts his wife with Leah, the unexpected bride, and he works another 7 years to get his first love. Christians, listen to this. Yeshua came 2,000 years ago. And according to the Gospels, Jesus himself, by his own word, says, I have come for the lost sheep of Israel. And when he entered into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, he wept. He didn't weep because he knew he was going to the cross. He wept because he knew his first love wasn't going to be the one he receives on his first visitation. He would get an unexpected bride. And the unexpected bride happens at the moment of the cross, where a Roman soldier who pierced him looks at Jesus the Messiah and says, you truly are the Son of God.
Right.
The unexpected bride came, and now what we're watching, Christians, is God, the Messiah, working another 7 years to get his first love. And the Jewish people are his first love. They will always be his first love. And this is the love story that we're watching. Now I have to ask myself the question. If I know the love story is unfolding, I either oppose God's love story with his first covenant people, or I watch the love story unfold, he's brought them back into the land. He's protecting them. He's providing for them. He's elevating them so that that moment of time when Messiah comes on the Mount of Olives, they look at the one whom they pierced, according to the prophet Zechariah. They will weep and mourn, but they will also know what true love looks like, because we rejected you. We denied you. Why would you come back and save us? And that's when they'll realize this is what divine love looks like. It was never about us.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, maybe we can help clarify a little bit.
Okay.
So when we say that a Gentile who believes in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, how do they do that? They have a covenant relationship with God through Jesus, okay, through Yeshua. And so they come into the covenant people. And if the Jews are the covenant people, then they are coming in. So if they're coming in, what are they coming into? Right? A faith that is of the Jewish people and for the Jewish people. Like he said, Jesus came into Jerusalem and he said, I came specifically for the lost sheep of Israel. And in Jeremiah chapter 50, God calls the people of Israel lost sheep because their shepherds have led them astray. This is a message for our people, first and foremost, that was rejected, accepted by some, but rejected and went out to the new bride, the unexpected bride, and is bringing them in.
So I want to follow up with the guy on that.
Yeah.
You see a Jew who starts to follow Yeshua still Jewish?
That's a hard question. I'm glad I'm not in your seat.
Wow. I think so. No, like if he's following his faith and following his path, so I think so. Like it kind of have to discharge his religion in order to move to another religion. I think so. I'm not sure. I'm not into this.
So when you say another religion, we don't look at it that way. But not because we don't want to or because it's not popular, but because it's not another religion. And when we mention the word conversion, the only conversion I see a Jew making when they accept Yeshua as Messiah is from sinner to forgiven. That's really the only conversion. It's not like going into a different group. I'm now in that group, and I've left my own group. And that's why we love so much of our Jewish identity. And that's why a lot of Christians actually, they go to Messianic synagogues. They want to actually become Jewish because they love their Jewish Messiah so much. And one of the missions of the Messiah that is prophesied is that he will bring the knowledge of Torah to the entire world. And if you've seen billions of Christians around the world who believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, how did they do that? How did they come to that knowledge?
Yeah.
Through the Jew. Through the Jew. You could say the Jewish people had a mission to be a light to the nations.
Well, Yeshua says salvation comes from the Jews.
From the Jews, right? So this is ours. This is why we love talking to you and having you here because you're our brother. And you're our brother in Israel. You're our Jewish brother. You're our brother in humanity. And we love sharing the Jewish love story with not only the world, but with our own people as well.
You know what I love about the Jewish people is you're not just Jewish by faith, you're Jewish by ethnicity.
That's
So
right.
You can never not be a Jew.
Well, I was, some guy came up to me,
which is great.
and
It's
said,
like
the people that tell me that I'm still Jewish are usually the Orthodox Jews. Of course, you're still Jewish. We think you're wrong, but you're still Jewish.
Yeah.
You're still Jewish. It's the
You're
secular.
confused.
Yeah, exactly.
You're confused.
Come back to
You're
Hashem.
okay.
Come back to Hashem, right? Come back to Hashem.
Yeah.
It's the secular Jews that I get the most heat from.
Interesting. And they've probably, because they've been burnt by religion themselves, in a lot of ways. I meet a lot of secular Jewish people, and often some of the things that I'm called to do in my time in Israel, because people always ask me, like, are you sharing the gospel? Are you sharing the gospel? Are you sharing Yeshua? And I said, well, first of all, you need them to return to the God of Israel. A lot of them are so secular that they've
That's
completely...
right. You got to go to God first.
Yeah. How can I talk about the complexities of the coming of God's promises through Mashiach if they don't even know the simplicities of who Hashem is and the promises that he's made? I get frustrated with Christians because we'll take verses out of the Tanakh, apply them to our own life, and reject the original audience who they were speaking to. Perfect example, Isaiah, not a weapon formed against you will prosper. This is what the prophet Isaiah says. And who's Isaiah obviously speaking to? The Jewish people. Not a weapon formed against you will prosper. Now, we as Christians often say that any weapon formed against me will not prosper. This is a promise from God. I agree with you. But when it happens in real time in Israel in 2025 or 2024, we don't acknowledge it. Why? Iran shoots a record-breaking number of ballistic missiles towards the land of Israel 2 times. I was here for the first one. And all I remember is the news saying there's like 300 odd cruiser missiles, ballistic missiles, suicide drones on our way. We don't know what's going to happen. And not a single ballistic missile or rocket or anything that has been fired from Iran caused a single Israeli casualty. Not a weapon formed against you will prosper. God is speaking his truth through this people. And we as Christians have to go, wow, if God is for them, who could be against them? You know, and that's why we can't just cherry pick verses and take what we like. There's another verse in the Psalms where we love the Psalms, right? How much do people love saying, you know, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, you know. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no. We take it and we own it. And yet when God says, if you forget Jerusalem, let your tongue stick to the roof of your mouth and let your right hand stop working. Why don't we take that? Because I feel like as Christians, we've forgotten Jerusalem. And we've forgotten the relationship. Even in Isaiah 40, God says, speak kind words to my people and comfort them. He says that. Why are we taking that verse and saying, wow, I've got to be kind to the Jewish identity because God has called me to do that. Yeah.
If Christians around the world want to start supporting Israel, but they're fearful or unaware of how to do that, what would you recommend for them?
Well, first of all, know that you are going to be persecuted for this. And that's a test. That's a test. You know, anytime we're actually following the will of the Father, persecution will come. Jesus doesn't say you might be persecuted, you might face troubles. He says in life, you will face troubles. You will be persecuted. So it actually should be the most obvious sign that we should support Israel. In fact, I challenge every single person watching this podcast today. I'm sure a lot of people who watch this are probably already very pro-Israel. But if you're not, share something positive about Israel and see the backlash. I would say I'm an optimistic pessimist. I'm pessimistic because I know what God has already said in his word. It's going to get ugly. In the prophet Zechariah, God says that all the nations are going to turn on Jerusalem and Judah. All of them. And we're seeing the makings of that now. So I know it's going to get bad. Yeah. Jacob's trouble is coming. But the question is, you know, it's like let's say I'm watching a football game. I record a football game and it's halftime and my team is down by, you know, let's say it's a soccer game and it's 5-0. Now you're watching the game and you're like, oh no, there's no way we can make a comeback from this. It's horrible. But maybe I pre-record and I already know the result. We win 10-5. That's how I feel. I know it's going to get bad. I know it looks bad, but I know God wins because who gets the last say? God. When God speaks. Now, where do we learn this? The book of Job. Job suffers. Job goes through horrible circumstances. And we don't even get the answer to why Job suffers in the book of Job. God comes, he speaks, and all we know is Job comes to realization that I've heard of you, I thought I knew you, but now I see you. But here's the beautiful thing. God gets the last say. And I know God gets the last say. So the wickedness of man and what we're seeing happening to the Jewish identity, I feel sorry for Hamas. I feel sorry for the nations of this world who are rising up against the Jewish people because you're going to be the ones who stand before the creator of the universe and he's going to bring his judgment on you because you didn't understand the assignment.
Nate, I'm going to challenge you real quick.
Yeah.
We go on the streets a lot. We share faith in Jesus with our Jewish people. Mm-hmm. I did with you. And it's not easy.
No.
It's not something that I would choose to do in my own flesh. I remember when I kind of got the idea that this is something I needed to do, I realized the sacrifice that it was going to, that I was going to make. And I said, you died for me. I'm going to live for you regardless of the cost. Now, I'm going to just ask you a question. Do you feel like the Jewish people need to follow Jesus in order for salvation?
Of course, we all do.
Yeah.
So I'll expand on that. There's only one solution to salvation, which is through the Mashiach. Mm-hmm. And a Jewish person a rabbi would agree with me. Mm-hmm. If I went to a rabbi right now and I said, the world's a mess, it's a disaster, what are we going to do? He's like, don't worry, Mashiach's coming.
Right.
Oh, okay. Mashiach's coming.
Right.
And Mashiach's going to solve this? Yeah, Mashiach will solve this. Here's the interesting thing about the Jewish people. If I walk into a synagogue or if I sit with a rabbi, we can have endless conversations about what the Mashiach is going to do and how he's going to do it, and both of us will have complete faith in him. It's just the identity.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think the argument is who is the Mashiach?
Who's the Mashiach?
That's right. That's right.
Not,
That's
not
right.
Yes, exactly.
Everybody, like, like every Jewish people, every rabbi believe that he's going to solve the problem.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Even a rabbi would admit we can't become pure. We can get close. We can try and do all these things to try and get purity, but we all deep down know that there's no way that we can actually become perfect and white as snow with our crimson red sin that has engulfed us and consumed us. And so I think the big thing for me to help Jewish people understand it, when we see this in the Gospels, they don't have theology and understanding that the Mashiach must suffer so I must gain. Right? They don't have that. And they didn't have that 2,000 years ago when Jesus took his disciples to Caesarea Philippi and he asked the question, like, who do people say that I am? And they say, some say you're this, some say that, but and then Peter will say, no, you're the Son of the living God, right? And Jesus says, you're correct. No one but my Father has given you this information. So that's a really important thing for us. No one, not even me. The Father gave you this, which means I can't convince a Jew that Jesus is the Messiah. Only the Father will do that when he wants, as he desires, and that's his obligation. And that's at the point of his glory, that he is going to do that. But then what we see is, then it says that Jesus started to speak openly with them and talked about now he has to go to Jerusalem and be killed, be handed over to the religious leaders. And that's when Peter will say, no, 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 no. And Jesus will say, get behind me, Satan. Right? What does it tell us? That even the Jewish people 2,000 years ago couldn't understand that the whole point that God had to take on flesh, had to offer himself up and die so that we could understand the depths, the lengths, the widths of his love. And so, there's no theology there for them because they've never seen anything like that. Right? I often say to the Jewish people, you're a people who have been hated by all but loved by one. And who's the one?
Yeah, Yeshua.
Yeshua.
Yeah.
And so there is a need for them to come to the full realization of who he is, but it's not going to happen through words, right? Because none of the people on this table were ever really convinced by words. We're always convinced by actions. It's the most powerful motivator because actions is the real stuff, right? I mean, I can say a lot of great things, but if I'm not doing something in my everyday life, it's meaningless. It's worthless. James will call it, faith without works is dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it has to be through our actions. And your action is going and meeting people where they are and having conversations and opening up the Jewish identity to, well, hey, who is the Mashiach? Mm-hmm. But more importantly, do you think you need the Mashiach?
Yeah.
So yes, all people need the Mashiach, both Jews and Gentiles. And the Jewish people know that they need Mashiach because they often will say, like, we're waiting for Mashiach, which is great for me because I will agree with them,
Yeah.
But I actually think I could be very confident in the sense that I could get to a person to a place where they could consider that Yeshua could very well be the Messiah based on the scriptures. That's not hard for me to do. Yeah. That's actually quite easy in my mind. If I sit with a Jewish person long enough and I walk them through the scriptures and they have a decent understanding, I can get them there very easily. The big problem is convincing them that it's not just the Mashiach, it's God himself. That's where their wheels will come off.
Right.
And that's interesting. But then again, it's an amazing question that you can ask through the text because according to God himself, he shares his glory with no one. And yet this rabbi just told me that the Mashiach is going to save us. So you have a problem now. You're idolizing, not me. Because if I identify the Mashiach as God himself, because only God could save us from the mess that we've created, and you're saying the Mashiach is just a man, you're the idol worshiper, not me, because I believe he's God.
Yeah.
And I believe he took on flesh for that purpose.
That's the exact same. It's the exact same comment I got today on the YouTube channel. I don't go into all of them, but I got that. Worshiping Jesus is idolatry.
Well,
and
it's idolatry if it's not God.
Exactly. That was my answer.
But worshiping the Mashiach is idolatry. Worshiping the wall that the Jewish people go and pray to is idol worship. I was with a Jewish tour guide, and we were standing in front of the Western Wall. And I've been talking to him about Yeshua, and I wanted to give him a question that he could ponder. And I said, let's say hypothetically, you and I transplanted a first century Jew that had the second temple, and we put him standing right next to us now, and we just made him watch. What do you think he would look at? And he looked at me and he said, look bizarre to him. They're praying to a wall. Not even a wall that has significance. It's the retaining wall that was built by King Herod. And I said, yeah, but it proves something. It proves to you and I, and it'll also prove to the first century Jew, that we need something physical. And God knows that. God has identified our need for the physical because we can't quite work out the spiritual. And so the beautiful thing about Hashem is he understands our brokenness so deeply. He says, I know that you can't actually worship me just in spirit. I actually have to take on flesh, because if I don't, you're going to worship a wall. You're going to worship a building. You're going to worship a rabbi. You're going to worship something in this realm, and I want you to worship me because I am the one that you need. So I'm going to actually do you the favor. Here's another example of that. When Adam and Eve fell, God puts this beautiful place, the Garden of Eden, and he puts the tree in the garden. And we can ask the question, why did God do that? Why would you put the tree in the Garden of Eden? It seems like you're setting us up for failure, because if we eat from that tree, we die, we're separated. Why would you do that? But the tree proves something. Because once there was something that they couldn't have, they had to make a choice to trust God. And trust, and that element of trust of the tree, proves something about Hashem. He wanted a real relationship. Because a real relationship comes with trust. So God puts the tree in so that man and woman knew that this was a real relationship I wanted to have with you. And the tree's the test. Now, we failed the test because we looked at the tree and we desired it and we ate from it, which is why the words of Jesus in Capernaum are so much more powerful, because he says, if you don't eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no part of me. God knew our issue from the garden. If we see something, we're going to desire it and we're going to want to take it. So God says, okay, I'll give you something to take. If you can't handle separating yourself from the physical realm and worship me just in spirit, I will take on flesh so you can actually have something physical to set your eyes on and worship me face to face, just as Moses had a relationship with me face to face.
Yeah.
It's all in the Torah.
It's
all
there.
in the Torah.
It is there, but a lot of religious Jews will still fight against that and say, no, we only worship the.
And so this is where I would.
Spirit,
This is
the
where
Spirit of God.
I would
Yeah.
give you guys the advice as a non-Jew, of course, right? Take it as it comes. Yeshua says, if your righteousness doesn't exceed that of the Pharisees, you can never enter the kingdom of heaven. So the religious leaders of today, I would say they're equivalent to the Pharisees. They follow the rules, they keep the rules, they do all these things, but they're men. And we know what men are like. We have to elevate ourselves beyond the rules, beyond the guidelines. And we only do that through love. Love in a way that confuses people. And you have to go beyond. It's not just the laws that I'm following. It's what motivates the laws. I was talking to these girls, like I was saying when we were at the beach, and I said, I want to give you an example of the difference between motivated by the law and motivated by love. And they couldn't be further apart. And here's my example. If I was your husband and I said to you, Ofer, I would never, ever cheat on you because I know it's wrong. I know it's wrong. Or if I said this, Ofer, I would never cheat on you because I love you.
Yeah.
Now, both have the same result, but completely different motivation.
Right.
And the funny thing is, when we're motivated just by what's right and wrong, we don't actually follow it. We fail. We absolutely fail.
For sure.
Like the speed limit, right? Driving along in a car, we know the speed limit's like, I don't know, like let's say it's like 60 kilometers an hour. There's no police car behind me. I'll break it. I'll go 65. I'll go 70 just because I get there. Police car's right behind me. I'm sitting on 58.
Man, wait, you're in Israel. It's
Yeah.
not 60 is 100.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah. So here's the thing. When we're motivated by love, it changes everything. If I had my daughter and my wife in the car and I go, oh, it's dangerous to drive faster, I love them. I'm going to just play safe, right? Jesus actually teaches this to his disciples. He says this, if you loved me, you would keep my commandments. Everything is motivated by love.
Love first. Yeah. And so what I want to say to you is that you're in the business of saving lives, right? Which is powerful. And it's a job that it's like, you know, what they used to say in the States, it's for the few, the proud, right? And they have this job that's so I would say sacred. It's in my opinion, it's a godly love. You're sacrificing yourself. You would die for the people of Israel. I know that. And it's
Or
obvious.
he probably risked his life
You
that
have,
many
yeah,
times.
yeah.
You know, Yeshua says there's no greater form of love than one laying down his life for a
Yes.
friend. And at the beginning of this interview, you said, I do it so people can have that.
By the way, also for us, for the Israelis, like the common Israeli, if I ask him, like, what's the most righteous thing to do, is go to the IDF, go risk your life for,
Right.
for others. This
Right.
is like, we call them the most kedoshim,
Right.
the most.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, we talked
And
about
it brings up a question in my mind. Okay. And he's like, uh-oh. You know my questions now. You're getting to know me. If someone leads a life where they abuse someone and they really harm people and they steal from people but they decide to change their ways and they go into the army and they sacrifice and they decide to change their ways, does that remove the bad that they've done in the world?
I can say that yes, like I really believe in that, and I know where you're going.
Yeah.
Because what Jesus done for others.
Yeah.
Got insulted, and then.
But even God Himself, like in Isaiah, you mentioned this about Isaiah.
Yeah.
God says your righteous deeds are like filthy rags. How would you say that in Hebrew?
Yeah, המעשים
Like-
שלכם כמו...
סמרטוט מלוכלך, כאילו.
It's like really bad, isn't
It's
it?
like really bad. Why? Because your sin is still on you. You can do the best thing in the whole world for humanity, but your sin is still on you. And when you face God, you're going to face Him with that sin on you. And so that's the question. Yeshua is in the business of saving souls. You see what I mean? So we want to preserve life on the earth so that people can live longer, but to what end?
Well, I think of it like this, right?
Yeah.
If the Mashiach came today, he would have authority and control over all the government. Bibi loses all his power. Right. Bibi's no longer in a position of influence, right? If the Mashiach came and everyone identified this is the Mashiach, we all agree, everyone's agreeing Mashiach, yep, he's the boss. Whatever he says goes, right? We all agree on that.
According to Isaiah, according to prophecy.
According to anybody who believes in the Torah and the Tanakh, of course. The second Mashiach comes, he's the king. He's the king, he's the leader, he's the ruler. Now, I want to ask Guy this question.
Yalla.
What position are you when you were serving in Duvdevan? Commander?
As a company commander.
Company
I had
commander.
like 60 to 80 people beneath me.
Who's above you?
The unit commander.
The unit commander. Yeah. Which unit commander would you prefer to follow? One that told you what to do but wouldn't do it, or one that did what he told you to do and you would follow because you trusted him more?
Of course, the second one. Of course,
Right?
we call it in Hebrew. We call it dugma ishit, like by example, lead by example.
Lead by example, yes. Exactly, right? And that's naturally in all of us. We don't ever want to follow someone who doesn't lead by example, and we'll all agree on this table. If the Mashiach is the greatest leader that the world will ever see, then you would expect that Mashiach to lead by example. Now, you and I would agree, and we've talked about this, the greatest form of love is sacrificing your life for a friend, which means if the Mashiach is going to be the greatest leader, he must lead by example because that would prove his leadership, but it would also be something very sacrificial because the highest level of sacrifice
is the ultimate sacrifice.
Yes. Yeah. So it ultimately points to the point, if you're a believer in the idea of Mashiach and you're a believer that he's a leader and you believe and understand what a good leader is, then there's no other option but the Mashiach to have to offer up his life as a sacrifice to prove to humanity why he's worthy of all the worship. The amazing thing about God is there's two visitations, right? And this is why I think I love the idea of Mashiach coming once and Mashiach coming again, because it had to be proven first. Right. And there's only one thing in all of the Tanakh that says that God is going to do something in one single day. It happens in the book of Zechariah. Once again, he says, I'm going to remove the sins of this land in a single day, inequity. Now, often a Jewish person will say to me, Yeshua can't be the Mashiach. It's not possible. I go, why? Because there's a checklist. When the Mashiach comes, everlasting righteousness, peace, everything is going to be resolved and sorted. But here's what's interesting. God never said he would do all those things in a single day. I agree there's a checklist. But the most important checklist and the most important thing to start that checklist is to make sure that we're right, because there's no point fixing the world.
That's right.
While sin still exists. And so the funny thing is this, and this is what I love about God. He understands that we're going to reject him. He understood it. He understood that the Jewish people were going to reject him. In fact, often when I say to rabbis, they say, oh, we don't accept him as Mashiach. And I was like, can I be completely honest with you? And they say, yeah, sure. I wouldn't trust your judgment just based on your track record. You rejected Moses. You rejected David. You rejected the prophet. You rejected every single prophet that ever came. You'd be the last person I'd probably want to rely on. In fact, whoever you've rejected is probably the most likely candidate.
I make that point too.
You know, so
the fact that he's rejected actually says something for him.
Yes, exactly. You know, and so God knows us so well that he actually injects salvation in our rejection. It's like you're with Duvdevan. This is what the most important thing is when you talk to people. You got to understand the world that they operate in. Your job is to outsmart your enemy. That is
always
the nature of your business.
They're getting better. We have to get better.
You always have to be a step ahead of them. And so this is the beauty of God. He's a step ahead of us. He goes, you're going to reject me. But your salvation is going to come through your rejection of me. And that's the beautiful thing. That's why when everything is said and done, we will worship Hashem, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, because he was smarter than we thought we were.
Yeah.
Just as Duvdevan comes in and you know these terrorists in Jenin are like, we've got this thing, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're in. We got you. You didn't even know. They're like, they're smarter than us. And so God, his ways are higher than our ways, and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. So he understood that if rejection was going to come, then your salvation will come through rejection. And this is the beauty of God's story, and it ultimately points to love.
Amen.
That's beautiful.
Well, Guy, I just want to say, maybe it feels like we're picking on you.
No, it's okay.
But I gotta tell you,
I'm not going out for this room if I'm not like.
Well, let me tell you, brother, we love you and we appreciate you, which is why we do what we do. I do want to ask you to tell those who are watching how they can support the IDF and Duvdevan.
First of all, is to know, to come, to visit, to be part of the story, as you said, Nate. And of course, I'm traveling a lot. Australia, Canada, the US, and as I mentioned, there is a lot of Christians communities that also support us. So basically what we are doing, we are traveling, we are speaking about what is the Duvdevan unit, what happened, like what the unit does, what happened since October 7, the fighting in the kibbutzim, show them like really what we did. Like we have images, videos, presentations. We are speaking about what happened, and of course I'm presenting the foundation. So I have when I'm speaking about the foundation, I'm saying that this is not only Duvdevan. All the special forces in the IDF are we have the best of the best in that Israel have to offer that serve those units. So I think if you want to invest in Israel, invest in those units, because these units hold the best that we have. So they are going to the IDF, serving few years, risking their life, getting injured physically and mentally. And now they're discharged from the IDF after 5, 6, 7 years and need to start all over again. They starting from behind. So what we are doing, we are pushing them back to the, to society, to the civilian life. We give them scholarships. We give them mentorship program. Yeah. We are helping the wounded soldier physically, mentally, as I said. And of course, we always remember the fallen brothers. We are supporting the families, the bereaved families, because we believe that they are the cornerstone of our foundation. You have to remember those guys that you saying God takes the best, right? Yeah. God takes only the best. So it's true. If you will check the guys that fell, unfortunately, since October 7th till now, they are really the top 3 of each team.
Wow.
Something unbelievable. These guys are the one, there is fire, they are jumping first. They're going into the door first.
Yeah.
So we want to take these guys and to project their values into Israeli society. So we are taking care of the families, but we're also doing community centers on behalf of their names. We showed what they love. I'm every day speaking about my friends that lost their life, and the Israeli youth, they're seeing those heroes and they want to become like them.
Yeah.
We are those guys are always, think about others, doing the best.
Yeah.
Excellence.
And the guys that I know from Duvdevan, I've been in touch with. I met a lot of them the day I went to the base, and I've also been in touch with one pretty regularly, who's become a good friend of mine. They're amazing young men, young men who like you would sit with them and you look at them in awe and wonder at their ability to have a life of service. You know, the world wants to paint the IDF and those who defend this nation as the monsters, but like truly, if you sat in a room with them and had a drink, had a coffee, I've always been amazed at just their integrity, their character, their ability to just like be selfless, you know, and that's the tragedy of it all. You know, the world wants to fall in love with Hamas terrorists who glorify death, who hide behind their children and their women, who are cowards until they have the upper hand. And yet you've got these brave young men and women of Israel and the IDF who are like, they're elevated souls and they're amazing people. So I think, you know, for anyone watching, if you have, you know, a nudge in your spirit that you want to help and add value to this nation, this is a beautiful place, because what you're doing is you're bringing restoration. Now, the most important thing is, and what Guy is doing is he's bringing restoration to people who could very easily be forgotten about. You did your service, you did your time, you risked your life. Now go. Right. And so what Guy wants to do is bring restoration to these people. Now, why is that important from a Christian's point of view? Because we believe in a God who's in the business of restoration.
For sure.
You think your life is over? You think no one cares anymore?
Yep.
Here's my gesture to elevate you and lift you up. I'm going to restore your life. Everything you think you're lost is going to be poured out by me sevenfold. I'm going to give you something back.
Also, it's a very easy today, you know, after what we've been through, this country in general, you know, the guys that join the IDF, they are going to to the intelligence, to the tech units, which is very important. Everything is important. But the guys that go in and risk their life, this is the most, you know, important job in the IDF. And when Duvdevan members, like young kids or like youth, like in high school guys, see that there is a foundation that, you know, you can serve in 8200 tech units, finish that, go into startups, going to get like nice salaries, right? Everything, the tech industry in Israel are amazing. But they see that there is a foundation that also support the special forces. They support
it motivates them
after they're discharging from the IDF, they give them scholarship. They're taking care of their families. I want to mention one, like, just to understand, you talked about the Messiah, right? So I have my own messiahs, many messiahs, my friends that I fortunately lost in battle. So I want to mention one guy, okay? His name is Omri Michaeli, a very good friend of mine. He's older than me. Unfortunately, he passed on October 7th. This guy, I'm fighting next to him the past, I don't know, like 15 years, okay? He's got injured the first time on Tzuk Eitan, Protective Edge War in 2014. Got a bullet in his leg. It was like very close to me. After a month, came back to his team. Okay, 2021, got injured again in Jenin. After a month or a couple of, I don't know, weeks, got it back to his team. The third time that he got injured, unfortunately, he passed on October 7th. This guy, handsome, tall, you know, successful young businessman, that he's a reservist. He don't owe anything to the IDF. He can go do whatever he wants, traveling all around the world.
To mention, the reservists don't have to do reserves.
Yeah, they don't have to do reserves.
Special Forces. Yeah. So he was volunteering.
Every time that I call him, like I continued in the IDF. I become like an officer, like a team commander, company commander. Every time that we had like a very complicated operation, he's very good at what he's doing. One of the most talented guys I ever met. He's like the most nowadays Achilles that I ever met. Like if I was showing you a picture of him, like a really big guy, like Anyway, every time that we call them, doesn't matter. Well, listen, there is an operation today. There is 2 terrorists. We need to break two doors. I need you. It's coming straight away. Leave everything. So these guys, we have to make sure we're saying like you know, in English, like in Hebrew. So I try to say it in English. So you say a guy died 2 times. One that he, like his soul is leaving his body. The second time that we are stopped speaking about him.
Okay.
So we need to make sure that these guys that fell in battle, we're never going to speak, stop and forget them or stop speaking about them. So this is what we do. We are doing this commemorations event. We're speaking about them. I want everybody will know the bravery and the sacrifice of them. And like we're doing with Jesus, right? With kind of the...
We want everybody to know about it.
Yeah. And just I want to mention something. We are a foundation. We have many foundations to support. My foundation is a 501c3 in the States, and we are so grateful. The Israelis, the Jewish people are so grateful that we have people like Nate and others. But still, we are facing a lot of hate,
Right.
and evil, and there is people like Nate that doing it for us, and we are not taking it as granted. And
We
thank
hope you
very
can
much.
see Yeshua through Nate's actions.
Well, it's
Because
like
that's what we're
kind of-
all trying to do. We're trying to show you the love of Yeshua, bro.
Yeah,
We love you. Thank you very much for hosting us. And
Oh, yeah.
this was fun.
Yeah, it was a great time. And you want to say something?
I might add one more thing because I have a tour that I'm trying to fill.
Yeah, and we also want people to be able to follow you as well.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Nate Buzz, but I'm actually doing a Christian tour again. I haven't done it for a long time, obviously, since the war, but I think it's from the 6th of November until the 14th of November of 2025. I'm going to be doing another trip through the land where I'm taking Christians to my favorite places and just unpacking the scriptures and teaching every single day so they can come to a deeper understanding of the beauty of what's happening here in this land. So if anybody wants to come on that tour this year in November, I'll give you guys the link and you can register today.
Let's do that.
I want to join this tour.
Yeah, we want to come
Look
too.
at you, bro.
We want to come too.
We're in the studio and I feel the Bible coming to life. He's like pouring in color to all these things. I'm seeing everything. It's so great, bro.
And we want to invite you to come out on the streets with us as well.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Because we're here to build bridges, you know. Really. And thank you all for watching this podcast. We hope you were enlightened by it and inspired by it. Follow Nate and follow Guy and follow So Be It. You know, give the video a like, leave your comments down below, and subscribe to the channel for more just like this. And
We'll
gentlemen,
see you on the next one.
yes, we'll see you in
Let's
the
do it.
gym.
We love Guy. We
Let's
love
go to the
Nate.
gym.
Yes. Yes, I waited for this part. Yes.
All right.
next time we're doing bench press
right.
competition.
Next time, we're doing it now. After we stop recording, we're doing it.